say that the meeting may well be recorded or will be recorded, and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. Recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their SBC or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you use joining a link on the website or on a mobile and tablet device, it is not always possible to identify you. You may not be recorded as in remote attendance. Could I also ask members to speak loudly and clearly into their microphones and to switch their microphone off after speaking? Otherwise, remote participants may be unable to hear the next speaker. So as I say, I welcome you all to the meeting this evening, and advise that in the room we've got our Director of Resources, Lisa Fillery, our Revenues and Benefits Manager, Zoe Kent, Director of Regeneration Neighbourhoods, Emma Wiggins, remotely, Head of Regeneration, Economic Development and Property, Interim Head of Planning, Joanne Johnson, in person, our Planning Policy Manager, Jill Peat, in person, Lawyer Russell Fitzpatrick, remotely, Senior Conservation Design Officer Projects, Jamil Kishore, remotely, Community Services Manager, Steph Curtis, remotely, Policy and Engagement Officer, Janet Dart, in person, and our Democratic Service Officer, Kelly McKenzie, in person. You won't be surprised to hear that, looking at the weather outside, there is no planned fire drill this evening. So if the alarm does go off, please treat it as a real incident. And of course, as we all know, we don't use a lift. And is there anybody that might need assistance in evacuating? No. Okay. Thank you. So are there any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Mike Whiting. His substitute is Councillor Peter Marchington. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, can I ask you to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of July, 2023, minute numbers 194 to 206 as a correct record? Thank you all. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Thank you all very much.
Apologies from Derek Carnell, who is still recovering from his incident.
Right. Okay. Is he okay? Is he?
He stepped down from Chair of Audit for the interim as well.
Right. Thank you. Just to make sure you send him our best. Thank you. We now come on to item 5 then, which is the Council Tax Reduction Scheme. And I ask our officer to introduce this one for us.
Thank you, Chair. The Council Tax Support Scheme has been in place since 2013 and changed to a banded scheme in April 2023. This has meant that working age claimants now have less changes to the amount of council tax they have to pay. This brings a saving to the council because less adjustments and reminders should be issued. As the scheme has been in place for under a year, we need time for the scheme to bed in. We are therefore not recommending any major changes to the scheme. In 2.4, the costs of the scheme are comparable with previous years, taking into account the council tax percentage increase. The minimum amount that working age claimants have to pay at 20% is comparable with most districts in Kent. To ensure that claimants stay in the same band and their support isn't reduced, we are recommending that the grid amounts in Table 1 are increased by the DWP annual uprating percentage. I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. No question, actually, just a comment, and actually a thank you to Zoe and everybody else involved on this. Good paper, good piece of work, and I fully endorse the recommendations, and I think actually it makes perfect sense. If it's so new, why try and change it at this point? So I think this is a fairly straightforward process, so happy to also agree with the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Members, those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to agenda item 6. And I'm not sure who's going to be doing it. Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the proposed changes to the Constitution that have been through the Constitution Working Group, fully listed in the report, and the amendments as proposed also highlighted in red. I'm not sure there's anything further I can add to the report, other than that there are some that are just correcting errors from previous drafts, some that are making clarifications to how the Constitution was drafted, and correcting some legal terminology. And the final one is expanding on the clarification of the scrutiny function within the committee structure as part of an internal audit recommendation. I will try and field any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm happy to propose these. This, as you say, have been through a cross-party Constitution Working Group, but largely tidying up issues, reflecting changes in law, and where there was some uncertainty previously left over from the change to committees to cabinet to committees. Probably still a couple left in there somewhere, but I think we've picked up most of them now.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do understand working groups, they do all the detail, so you don't have to, but sometimes implications are not always made clear. So under licensing committee, it apparently the Constitution Working Group agreed that it's mandatory that you have training to sit on licensing committee. Now, as the licensing committee itself deals with the discussion and agreement of policy issues, I'm not talking about the subcommittee and the hearings, I'm talking about the licensing committee itself, then could I ask when you will be put into the Constitution Working Party that all of the service committees, including this one, has training so that members know how to discuss and agree policies? Thank you.
Thank you, and that'll be no time soon from me. Councillor Hunt.
Thanks, Chair. I'm quite happy with everything. I've just got one question on Amendment 7. That's page 43, where we are looking to authorise head of legal partnership to delegate legal work about public rights of way. Just the question is, my understanding of KCC deal with all public rights of way, so why have we got anything in there that we deal with that?
Very much. So this is correcting an omission that's not been currently in there. So I think this is how we currently operate and how business does operate as normal, but it's not technically in our constitution. So that's why it's being added in. So it must be working within our remit. So potentially working with KCC, but with the delegation needs to be formalised.
I'll come back because it's not an addition, it is just changing. So I can understand the change, but I just wondered when we've ever used it and if it's anything we
don't think we have. It's been noted that it's not there. Should we need to rely on it when later questioned in court?
which will never happen. That's fine if it is. But it may be something, if there isn't something that we need in a constitution of taking it out completely. But if it's something that has to be in there, then so be it.
Yeah, I'm guessing there's a legal officer. Oh, yes. Russell, can I bring you in, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I am aware of, I certainly know within my team, in the planning team, that we have had reason or need to use this power. Whilst Kent County Council do the public rights of way and all that, they can delegate some of those functions to us. And so I know, for example, that we have got a particular issue where we've got a development which has been in existence for about 30 years now. And there's a public right of way which hasn't been extinguished, which is running straight through the middle of the property. And that has stopped, for example, a house builder from putting a conservatory on. So it is actually to assist us in our functions. And it has been something which we've requested previously. I hope that assists.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Henderson, please.
Chairman. I think we're getting there on this. There's been some good work. It has clarified at least most of the queries that we've had, and I'm sure we'll identify some more eventually. So I'll second the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock?
Yeah, I was just going to say what Russell said.
Right, thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, I'm quite sure that KCC Public Right of Way will be very happy for Swannborough Council to pay and do the work on areas which under the law are their responsibility. I noticed, not that I was on it, but I did see bits and pieces. I noticed there were some hangovers from the highways agreement where we did do an awful lot of work on behalf of KCC in relation to the Highways Act. I'm pretty sure that not all of them managed to sneak out. I would have thought that this was one of them. It's all very well saying, yeah, but it benefits us. Yeah, but if it's somebody else's job, we've got to start doing other people's jobs because it's costing us money and they're saving.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Bowen, please, and then Councillor Lehman, and back to Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Chairman. Two comments. One, just for I should have picked this up before. Amendment 1 on the mileage. As I said before, the working group, I'm pleased about the expenses that will be discussed in consultation with group leaders. But the decision, if necessary, will rest with the chief executive. But just for clarification on this, that should the present circumstances, for example, should the chief executive not be around, then it would be the deputy. Does that? I presume that doesn't need to be factored in. That's fine. My other comment, then, actually listening to the comments about KCC, etc. I'm wondering whether that particular amendment potentially could be deferred, subject to just for clarification. Actually, if there is nothing for us, if there is no need for us as a council to actually have it in the constitution, take it out. And totally accepting Councillor Harrison's point that if it's going to potentially put pressure on us, which is unnecessary, get shot. But it might be wise to hold that one off until a future and then bring it back once we've got that sorted, if possible.
The scheme of delegations covers absences from any of the named officers. So whenever Clarissa's around, not around, whoever is delegated, that's already covered in the scheme of delegations.
So could you like to come back in, please?
Yes, if I may just assist, the fact that we might have the delegation doesn't mean we need to exercise it. This is obviously on the public rights of way issue. The other matter, of course, is that by way of example, is that we do use, say, for example, at Maidstone, my team does use this delegation to assist with doing public rights of way, to assist with the movement of planning applications, to divert public rights way, etc. And it is a provision that exists within the Highways Act to allow us to do this. So I think it's it's not doing KCC's work for them, but it certainly is assisting us in delivering the job for the council. It's to our benefit.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock?
Say it differently this time. Russell covered the point I will add one other thing. It is a mistake to think that KCC deal with all trail work. Most districts have a contract with KCC and they do it on our behalf. But some districts actually still hold their own, like Thanet. So it isn't quite as straightforward as this is a KCC responsibility. It makes absolute. I mean, we had a recent one in Merston where we've been trying to get a stopping up order, and I wouldn't want to have to be running off to KCC every time we wanted to progress anything like that. They've got a 5-year backlog on things at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Lehman.
Chair. This is going to sound really pedantic, but we've got in the first section here what I would expect from amendments to a document of this kind, where the removals are struck through and additions are underlined. And then in the second one, it looks like the stuff that's been added is the stuff to be removed is underlined rather than struck through. Is that the case, that the underlined section in that is the bit that's being removed, which is what it says at the top of Amendment 2? Would it be possible in future to have consistency across the amendments there, please? Thank you. And yeah, there was just, I was going to point out in Amendment 1, paragraph 6, the word consultation has been added, but the sentence doesn't make sense without the word consultation in there. So is that replaced a word, or is the word, or are some of the other words added in there as well?
So it's the very first page, and it's point 6.
Mike's just answered the question. It's a replacement of a word. So
Yeah.
The word that is replaced should really be in there and struck through. Clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bourne, are you happy? Right. Okay. So I've got a proposal, Councillor Baldock for that one, seconded by Councillor Henderson. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you all very much. Right, move on to item 7, which is the local plan review next steps. This one's in the hands of Jill, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall this committee took stock of the options for progressing the local plan review this time last year. This followed a period of considerable change in personnel at the national level, which created uncertainty around the direction of travel for both the National Planning Policy Framework and the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. The committee agreed the recommendation that any formal stages of consultation for the local plan review should not take place until there was greater clarity at the national level, but that officers should continue with the necessary evidence preparation so that when the time came, the council would be ready to progress at pace with a formal programme and public consultation. In taking stock of the position after the local elections in May, 5 options for moving forward with the local plan review were presented to the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group as set out in paragraph 2.23 of the report. Members of the working group discussed the options and a consensus was reached as set out in the proposals to this committee. The recommendation is that Council defer a decision as to a timetable for the future stages of the local plan review until such time as the national planning landscape is clearer, but independent of this process, proceed to develop the evidence base regarding local development needs and potential, with this process to be wholly reflective of local circumstances rather than central targets. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. I've got no problem with that recommendation. I'm looking for an assurance, which I suppose if I get it, it will all feed into that anyway. Can I be assured that the policies of this council, and for information, do you know we never rescind a policy? They're all sitting on, well, they were sitting on the shelf until all the shelves came down. God knows where they've gone now. But we have put up some really good policies over the years: economic development, local labour usage, am I allowed to say labour usage, employment usages, the social values stuff, which we agreed some years ago and we've looked at recently. There's a whole host of really good policies which we as a council believe in. Even if you don't know it, you believe in it because you haven't rescinded it. And they should all form part and parcel of that local plan. So I just wanted to seek some assurance that Jill has found the shelf with all these things on and you're working through them. And to be fair, during the last 4 years, we had discussions on health issues, and there is a section in the local plan on health, which I'm really pleased about. There was a section in the local plan on health. I'm hoping it's still there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. The short answer is yes. And we are working very collaboratively with the various partners around infrastructure delivery. And of course, you would expect me to say this, that the local plan is one of the most important things the council does, because it's the mechanism whereby we can deliver the spatial objectives of the corporate strategy. So these are all on our radar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. I think Lisa would say the second most important. Right. I've got Councillor Worcester and then Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up Councillor Harrison's point and thank her for bringing that up, because obviously we know how important the local plan process is to the borough. But since my election, I've been hearing some really excellent points from members in working groups and committees linking our climate policies and our environmental policies with other departments around the council, and I'm hoping to see that those policies are reflected in the local plan to make sure that the importance that members see in our climate emergency is reflected in our local plan going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
I saw no other hands. I thought somebody better propose a recommendation, so I do so.
Fantastic. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Hunt. Thank you. Those in favour?
Sorry, Chair, I was expecting an answer to Councillor Worcester's question. Jill, about the environmental policies, specifically the climate change and all the rest of it. I know I was talking about the ones on the shelf, but these are more recent.
Okay, thank you. Good point, well made. Jill?
Yes, again, the short answer is yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got a proposal from Councillor Baldock, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to item 8, please. And this one's in the hands of Joanne, I think. Apologies, Jill.
Thanks. Yes, me again. Thank you very much. Okay, so the Medway Estuary and Swale Strategy, the MEAS, was approved by DEFRA back in 2019. And it's a strategy that seeks to reduce flood and erosion risk to properties and infrastructure around the Swale and Medway estuaries. The purpose of the report before you is to set out the proposal for partnership working between the Environment Agency and Swale Borough Council on the delivery of the first 10 years of the MEAS plan. The proposed partnership with the Environment Agency will also include Medway Council, Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council, KCC and Natural England, as well as the Internal Drainage Board. The partnership will work to agreed terms of reference to deliver a number of specific projects across the whole area. The work to establish the full costs of these projects is ongoing, but the Environment Agency have business case approval for over £14 million for all projects across the area so far. Additional funding is likely to be needed, and there will be a variety of funding streams to explore once the detail of each of the projects is nailed down, and that includes developer contributions. So it really makes it very important for us to be part of the partnership. Members of the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group have discussed an earlier version of the report before you and supported the recommendations, which are to note the proposed approach regarding partnership working on the MEAS and to agree that the council joins the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks. I won't say too much on it, but I just can't believe that we haven't been part of it before. I used to go along to these when I was on Iwade Parish Council, and they're really good. It's good to, it's a no-brainer really to go and join it now.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
I'm look at the map on page 68. I have serious concerns about the whole approach of the Medway Estuary and Swale Coastal Flood Risk Management Plan. I don't agree that we, from the looks of it, do nothing on the northern shore of Sheppey, and the areas around Lower Halstow. A sustainable adaptation, no active intervention. No, that needs intervention there, because if that, and we've recently got it actually, so it just shows that this really is not the most intelligent of documents, because we've had to have intervention in Lower Halstow, because otherwise a huge area was potentially going to be flooded. So if we're going to join this, I'd really urge that we fight for a revised approach to flood defence in Swale. It's totally inadequate what they're proposing to do. They seem to have given up on most of Tenham and Connew as well. So if we're going to join this, we've got to make the case that they review this and start looking at putting in some proper protection.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, please.
My apology. I don't object to suggesting that a policy needs change, needs development, but this policy has been developed over, I think, about 4 years, and for Councillor Baldock to come in after 4 years and say we shouldn't do this because there are a couple of bits which I don't agree with is absolutely not the right way for this council to pursue it. We are talking about substantial amounts of money being made available, and the route to further money being made available for flood prevention and flood control. And I think it is clear this council should approve the proposal before it. So if it hasn't been already proposed, I will propose it.
Thank you. And I'll, whilst there are other people waiting, I'll get Councillor Baldock to come back here, because my understanding was that's not quite what he said, but I'll let him explain if he has any different.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's not what I said at all. I said if we're going to join this, we must start pushing for changes. That's not saying, oh, we don't join it because we don't agree with it. What we're doing here is mandating the people who join it to push for those changes, and that's what I'm asking for. I mean, look at the amount of active intervention that Medway gets. And look at our coastline and how little we get. There's a lot of people and a lot of properties will be affected in Swale as well as Medway if the sea continues to rise and we don't do anything about it. So all I was asking for is when we join, back to the mandate that we're giving as a council to try and improve this.
That's what I understood you to have said. Thank you.
Didn't understand that was what was said, but
Yeah.
that's what was said, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Last, please.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, I do think we need to do something about our coastline, certainly with global warming and the fact that way sea levels will rise. But what I wonder and worry about is what's the cost going to be to this council? How much officer time is going to be involved? What sort of agreements we've got to sign into? And that's not really within this report. And I think we need a bit more clarification on that.
Okay. Jill, could you come back for us? Thank you.
Thank you. There will be a resource implication at this stage, officer time. That's the resource implication for engaging in the partnership with the EA. The upside of that is that the benefits in terms of supporting sustainable development and partnership working outweigh the costs, which are at this stage only officer time. Part of this, we are not making any financial contributions to the partnership or committing ourselves to spending any money on any of the schemes, but the partnership approach is beneficial in the sense that we may be able to draw in developer contributions, and when we work in partnership in this way, match funding and bidding tends to be more successful because it demonstrates a consensus across all interested parties that they are working together to deliver the infrastructure. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm just going to bring Lisa in quickly.
Yes, I would say that if there are any projects that come out of the work that the group does that we would have to contribute to, then that would form part of the capital programmes or the budget working papers. So it wouldn't just go under the radar because we were part of the group. It would need to form part of further decision-making processes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bonney, please.
Yeah, one is, where's Tailness? Top of page 69. Yeah, sorry, I didn't think my geography was that bad, but I don't know where Tailness is. Anyone, any ideas? Oh, okay. But aside from that, I think there was mention of the Lower Medway Drainage Board, and we say there's no resource implications, but if they agree to take on quite a chunk of funding, effectively that comes from us by default, because of the way they're funded. Is that not right, Lisa?
Their levy that they impose, that they ask us to collect, is not capped in the same way that our ability to raise council tax is capped. So if they increase their levy by 5%, we can only increase our council tax collection by 3%. So that difference comes from savings that the council has to make. There is currently a working group now of councils that have been awarded the additional funding that is trying to deal with the Drainage Board levy problem. And so I'm hoping that that will progress, and then but anything that the Drainage Board say that they should, that they will deal with, needs to be monitored by the other group members, because that inadvertently we would have to try and fund that, but that's running alongside the other piece of work that is trying to solve that problem.
yeah, so from that, there is a financial risk to us through the back door, effectively, because if the lower drainage board decide to fund something, then effectively that will come via us, and we can't step in. Go on then, Lisa.
Well, I would hope that as group members, we would say, is that in your current budget or not?
Yeah.
And that's part of that will be part of our remit, I would suggest, on this group, that anything that the drainage board suggests that they will be funding is properly interrogated to make sure that it's not in addition to what we're already having to collect, assuming the work of the lobbying group doesn't work, which I'm hoping it will.
Okay. And the second point is that actually quite a lot of the parties involved here were those that are involved in the upper as well as the lower Medway Drainage Board. Now, those are split apart and separated as two separate entities. So I do hope that there will be a good working relationship between the upper and the lower post that split, because they are both tied effectively into this. So yes, I agree we need to be part of this. I think we've got to be extremely careful about the funding coming in or the request actually costing us twice as an authority. And it's not something that actually applies to some of the other local authorities to such a large extent. We're the ones with the major exposure here. And I think that needs to be recognised.
Thank you. Got Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to echo those concerns about the finance implications here. I agree. I've only been part of the Lower Medway Drainage Board group for a short while, but I feel that this isn't quite as clear. It doesn't give me as many reassurances as I require, because we've only got one pot of money, and actually at the moment we're in a position where if we give to something, it has to be taken away from something else. So I agree. I'm not particularly interested in having a situation where we sign up to a partnership for all good intentions, but in fact write a blank cheque because we agree that we've signed up something. I'm more reassured by what Lisa has said, absolutely, but I would be keen to hear more information about exactly the way that partnership is going to work, because it works both ways. It may mean that we can add lobbying effort to these projects, but at the same time, if they're expecting Swale to come as a major player, and with the budget that goes with that, I think we have to be reasonable about what sort of impact we can have on these sort of partnerships, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Joanne.
Thank you. I wanted to go back, if I may, just to pick up on Councillor Baldock's point around the map. Having looked at that just now, if members are working from a paper copy, it's going to be very hard to see that legend. So I just wanted to explain that the red to the north, the west and the south is flood defence repairs, refurbishment and localised raising. The blue to the south is flood defence repairs and resilience improvements. And it's the section of yellow, which is sustainable adaptation, no active intervention. So just to make that clear, apologies, the legend, as I say, if you're working from a paper copy, is probably quite hard to read. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of points. Firstly, Councillor Worcester's started it. There are 6 members of this council who sit on the LMIDB. You know, it's not some amorphous body who's going off doing whatever they want. There's 6 of us who should be holding them to account. I did when I was there. I soon got turfed off, to be fair, but I did my bit. The second point is, I'm obviously reading it wrongly, because I just read this, that they wanted us in there with them, you know, showing our support. They know we're strapped for cash. All of us are. Well, all of the councils are. I'm not talking about the government agencies. But I think they're looking for us to be supportive, because some of the box ticking exercises that they have to go through does depend on it. And the final point is that, 2 other points. Number one, Maggie agreed managed retreat. That's what it was called at the time. And huge swathes of the island are managed retreat. And the final point is that there have been a number of iterations of MEAS over the years, which we have had the opportunity to be part of, not necessarily as a Swellborough councillor. James has said about from iWade. I mean, you know, these bodies are out there. They don't always just go to Swellborough Council, we must have your rep. They're actually interested in people from the community who have a specific interest coming along and sitting on them. So there have been various iterations, not just MES. I can, you know, the old flood risk thing for 40 years. There was all sorts of people involved. So there have been opportunities over the years, and I'm sure there will be again in the future. But I can't see that this is committing us to any pounds, shillings and pence. Quite happy to go with it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner, did you have your hand up? I thought so, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. As well spotted by Councillor Bonnie, Tailnest does not indeed exist anywhere. Well, not on Google Maps, it didn't when I just did it, but I presume they mean by Sheerness on the paper. But
West of Queenborough.
Oh, okay, Google Maps doesn't have that. Indeed. In terms of the upper and lower Medway Drains Board, I think that was an absolute good point made there in terms of a good working relationship. But it also, I think, needs to be an absolutely fair relationship between the two as well. We don't want us to become the almost like the poor relative, so to speak. I was fully supportive of this, but listening to the debate, I'm not quite so sure now. In terms of the officer time as well for this, yes, there will be an implication. I understand that, but I think the potential effect of not getting involved with this and something actually happening will end up requiring a hell of a lot more officer time to put right and a lot more money. I think I agree with Councillor Baldock as well that having a seat at the table should mean that we are actually able to do something. We're not at the table. We're not going to be able to do diddly squat. So I think that's one of the virtues of it. But I'm also minded that last couple of years ago, we had within this council the Maritime Working Group, which seems to have set sail into the sunset, pun intended, on that one. Question then is, given the discussion, the alternative options saying not to do anything, what really are the implications of that, given the comments in terms of the potential costs, etc.? I just want to be interested in exploring that a little bit more. Thank you.
I don't think there are any additional costs to that. If the Drainage Board agree to do something and we're not there, they're still going to agree to do it. So I don't think by joining the group, we are signing up to any additional costs. I think by being there, we will have more information on what is going on and what the Drainage Board, the Drainage Board element would happen anyway, because they are their own entity, and as things stand, they can increase their levy by whatever they like. So that I think that's a reason to join. Not like this has anything to do with me at all, but I did that argument with the finances. I think has confused it slightly from the benefits of it being there. Right. They wouldn't be able to commit us to, other than the Drainage Board levy element, they wouldn't be able to commit us to any other funding. And I think we could probably challenge the Drainage Board. Yeah, we're not. Yeah.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hunt and then Councillor Palmer and Councillor Lehman.
I've got a question, then I'll come back if that's all right. The question is, do we know how often these groups meet?
At this stage, no. The group is in the process of being set up, subject to the outcome of the discussion this evening. And one of the first things that they will do is agree terms of reference.
So could I then ask that I propose that we add an additional recommendation, and that is that we have at least half yearly reports back to Policy and Transportation Working Group on this. So then if there is anything to discuss, at least we're getting updates of what's happening at those groups. And if there's decisions, if it does come up that there's finance implications, that we as a Plan and Transportation Working Group can then refer it back to this committee.
I'm happy to second that, Mr. Chairman. I think that makes eminent sense.
Okay, thank you. Members, would you be happy with that addition? Yeah, so, okay. No, that addition, thank you. And I've got Councillor Palmer.
No, what I was going to raise has been covered. You know where Telness is now. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we'll have a night out, shall we? Yeah. Councillor Lehman.
I'm also speaking on Tailness. If anyone looks at the map, there is a small green blob next to Dead Man's Island, just opposite Greenborough, and that is biodiversity. That isn't flood defences. As you may be aware, there are no houses there, and that is, I think that's earmarked for salt marsh restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got Russell online there to bring you in. Russell, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just to assist on page 70, we've got implications, and under financial resource and property, there is also the ability to include developing a consistent mechanism for how Section 106 monies may be limited and used as contributions to the schemes. So there is additional funding that may be relevant, but if we're not part of that board of this partnership, we're not able to develop the policy to be able to bring on those contributions. So I don't think that should be left out of the equation. Thank you.
Yeah, good point, Russell. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Marchington, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just you mentioned the Lower Medway Internal Drainage Board, and of course I'm so I was rep on that one of the reps on that one. They've just finished their budgeting for the forthcoming year, or the plan for coming year, and they're looking at a 5% increase. That's what's on the table at the moment. I assume that Swale Council officers know all about that as such. You know,
No, not yet. So that I think I do need to we need to meet, I think, as a group of officers and members that go to that group to understand the implications, because I know that Councillor Bonney tried to highlight it to the other members of the group of what the implications are of above council tax increase on councils. So I assumed a 5% increase at the moment. So that's
okay. In
our assumptions.
Would you like me to report back from each meeting? You know, I'm prepared to do that. I'll just naturally assume that it's all gone out to everybody. So, and in some respect, if we do discuss business things there, they were talking about a remote tractor crawler that did.
Sorry, members, can we do the courtesy of listening, please? Thank you.
They were talking about a trench machine, you know, which would save an awful lot of time. Health and safety implications as well. It's faster. They went through all the motions of whether to hire the machine when they needed one, or whether to get a contractor to do it. And I'm afraid I'll put forward that why don't you buy it? And a couple of other business people there all agreed that we've all made mistakes in our own business, but we didn't buy gear quick enough, you know. And the proposal to spend £53,000 was down to me. I must apologise.
Right, you'll be removed off that board very shortly. Councillor Marchington, thank you. Right. So Councillor Ball, you proposed it? Am I right? You didn't? Or would you like? Sorry, Councillor Henderson, it was that proposed it. I do apologise. Yes. Oh, you wanted to? Sorry, Councillor Bonney wants to speak. Yeah, sorry.
So can I just be clear? Because I don't know where in this report it does refer to the Lower Medway Drainage Board, because there are obviously a few members here that are on it and probably should have declared an interest, first of all. No? Yeah, but they're a party to it, aren't they?
Potentially.
Okay. The second thing is we're going to join the partnership. Who's going to be physically representing us? Is there going to be a member involvement, or is it just officers only? Because there's a great deal of local knowledge within the membership of swell councillors, like as Councillor Baldock pointed out, specific elements of it and others. Because I think as part of our recommendations, we probably should be specifying how that is.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Harrison.
I think that it should be an officer. I get the local knowledge. They have got a mouth, they can ask. But what is more important from an officer point of view is the words gone, you know, working across the piece, the 106s and all the rest of it. And I think that is why it would be better if it was an officer. I don't say this lightly because you know me. I think we should be involved in lots of things, but horses for courses. Not that you're a horse, Jill. I think an officer would have that breadth right across the council to be able to go, yeah, there, or actually, there's one of our councillors who's got a very detailed knowledge of that. It might be worth talking to them. They didn't rocket science.
Okay, Councillor Hunt.
Thanks, Chair. I think that when we discussed it, the policy, I don't even know what it's planning and transportation policy working group. I think the officer that's going to be going was actually at that meeting to talk to us. So I've got full faith in that officer going along. But that's also the point that I sort of wanted to make sure that we have got reports coming back, because once that officer's been, and then reporting back to everybody to have a discussion. And I said at least half yearly. I would think that if there is a meeting, something has to come back. It will come back to that committee.
Thanks, Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Hunt. I think it's important that we get something back to look at. I would like to just put a slight amendment to recommendation 1. It says to note the proposed approach regarding partnership. I think we have to agree it, but anyway, without necessarily agreeing that strategy, or the Medway Estuary and Swale strategy. I'm just wary of it looking like we're signing up and by doing so endorsing the current strategy without expressing concerns. I do have concerns with the strategy. I think those concerns have been expressed by a number of people, including the MP. So it's just reflecting that, yes, we're going to work with them, we're going to join the partnership. That doesn't mean to say we endorse the existing strategy.
Yeah, I think jumping on your toes here, Jill, but the first paragraph was to note the proposed approach regarding the partnership working, and the second bit is to agree that we join the partnership. Is that?
Yeah, but it's to have something in there just saying that by joining it, we're not just blindly endorsing the existing strategy. It's just saying that we're joining it, we joined a partnership, but we are not, we're not accepting it. Recommendation 3, could be we join the partnership. Recommendation 3 that we seek to influence an improvement in the strategy when it comes up for a review next. Just something other than it looking like we're blindly accepting the existing strategy, which I know a lot of people have concerns with.
Councillor Henderson.
I was told much earlier on that I'd mistaken what Councillor Bulwer was getting at. Quite clearly, I wasn't. He is trying to get us to put in a statement which essentially says we're joining this organisation, but we don't believe in its objectives. And that's not true.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
We may have some concern about the north side of Sheffield. We may have some concern about other areas on the south side of the Swale. But that does not mean that we're not joining this organisation wholeheartedly. And there is no indication that we are saying we agree that the council join the partnership. I've been a member of loads of partnerships over many, many years. And it sure as hell has never meant that I can't sit there and object to a proposal that they're putting forward. You don't have to identify that as a clear change. And that's what Councillor Bullock seems to be suggesting. And in my view, that would prejudice our joining of the organisation.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
No, I don't see any problem with that, having an addition saying that it's an aim of the council to try and protect parts of Swale from erosion or where possible. And I think that's a fair comment to put in. I do understand what Councillor Henderson's saying, but I think we could put that in as a clear steer to anyone who's on that to what the aims and objectives of this council are. Thank you.
Thank you. Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's more of an observation. I mean, you've got to be in it to be able to influence it. And I'm looking at the opening sentence at 1.1, which says the Medway Estuarine Swale Strategy was approved by DEFRA in 2019. So I think it's a strategy that's already been approved. I think whether or not you can actually tell officers to go away and try and change that is a slightly different thing. But having said that, I think it would be beneficial to be on it to be able to influence it. If you're not on it, you won't be able to influence it.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I sympathise and empathise with Councillor Baldock on this, but I don't think it needs an additional recommendation. As recommendation one is, it says to note the proposed approach. It's not saying we can't look to change it, note what they're looking to do, but we again can what's just been said. Once we've got our feet at the table, we can negotiate. We can talk about it and hopefully make those changes. I don't see there's any need for a third recommendation because it is just to note what they're thinking about or how they're thinking about doing it. Doesn't mean to say that's the final thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, it's just that the DEFRA strategy is due for review, and it mandates the people who represent us and the work on that review to show where we're working towards. I think that review is important, and I think we need to be making the point in that review that there is too much surrender of land in this area. That's all. It's not saying, there's nothing saying we're not joining it, because quite obviously you have to, as somebody did say, you have to join it if you want, if you want an influence in reviewing it. It'll give us a greater impact. It's just saying that we're working towards the existing strategy. That's what it's saying, and it's just saying we're working towards that strategy. But that doesn't mean to say we agree with it and don't think that when the review comes, we will be looking to make specific changes to protect Swale a bit better. I don't see there's a problem in doing that. But if you don't want to do it, that's fine. I mean, I'll still support the recommendation. I just think it's good to give a show a steer that we're not happy with what DEFRA did in 2019.
Thanks. And again, I think we can do that on the inside. Councillor Henderson.
Well, I should keep coming back on this, but we have a proposal on the floor. That proposal has accepted a little amendment. I can't even remember what it was.
Report. It was the most important one, Councillor Henderson, reporting back in a minimum of 6 months.
Sorry, right. So we've accepted that. what further alteration is being proposed to the proposal on the floor? Because Councillor Baldrick is talking about it very widely, but I don't hear what the proposal is.
Okay, so I think he's acceded to the fact that we move forward, but we make, and he would support it as written, but he just wants to make sure that when we're at the table, we're having an opportunity to influence. So, right, okay. So those in favour of the recommendations with the amendment of the at least six monthly review? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Right, so we move on to agenda item 9. And this is in the hands of, is it Johnny? Oh, fantastic, and you'll get it right in the end.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So this is a further report that has had a previous iteration go to the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group, who were supportive of the recommendations. The recommendations are to agree the setting up of a local focus group as part of KCC's enhanced bus partnership hierarchy, and to agree that this group reports to the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group, with the chair and vice chair of that group attending the local focus group and representatives from each of the 4 area committees. So by way of background to these recommendations, KCC used to manage and run quality bus partnerships in each district. These consisted of KCC and Swale Borough Council members and officers and the commercial bus operators in Swale. And they were used to raise local issues, discuss relevant planning applications and parking related items. These were resourced and administered by KCC, but they ceased to exist when government started development of its national bus strategy. As part of that national strategy, KCC have received a total of £35 million across 2 tranches to deliver aspects of its bus services improvement plan. And as part of that funding, government requires that each area set up an enhanced partnership. So this is a statutory board, and that is necessary for KCC to receive that funding. KCC have established that enhanced partnership board, which is chaired by their cabinet member for highways and infrastructure. That's an officer-led meeting, and there are no representatives from the districts. There are enhanced partnership scheme monitoring groups set up for East Kent, West Kent and for Kent Thameside. Swale is part of East Kent and has 1 place at that meeting. Enhanced partnership scheme monitoring groups are high level, and so such in that vein, they will not cover any local district issues. So KCC believe that this will leave a gap, and to fill that gap, they have suggested local focus group meetings be set up in each district. They are happy to send representatives, but they state they cannot resource it like they used to for the Quality Bus Partnership, and so they are asking districts to set up and to resource them. So these are not a statutory requirement for the funding. KCC see these local focus groups as a replacement for the previous Quality Bus Partnership meetings, in that they are a way of local issues from the bus companies being raised. So representatives at the meetings would be the district councils leading and chairing the meetings, KCC Public Transport and Planning and Transport Development representatives, the primary bus operators and district council officers, according to need, from planning, parking, active travel and environmental health. So they would be operational and officer led. As it stands, we don't have an obvious resource within Swale that has buses in its remit. So setting up the local focus group needs to be considered in that context. If members agree, it's proposed that the local focus group is high level, meeting twice a year and managed by the Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhoods, who would chair and coordinate the group. So KCC would lead on the updates on the bus improvement strategy at the forum. Swale Borough Council would be a conduit or an enabler, bringing partners together rather than leading or delivering any work directly. We would want to be making attendees very actively aware of our role and the restrictions around that. And this, we believe, makes the resourcing manageable. So the report proposes the issues to be raised are requested from each area committee prior to each local focus group, with feedback to the area committees afterwards. It's proposed that the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group is the conduit for feedback into the council, and as such it's proposed, as I started by saying, that the chair and vice chair of the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group attend the local focus group, as well as representatives from each area committee to provide an element of local voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
I can't actually believe they're brass neck. So, and I actually think we're missing something somewhere. I don't mean we are missing something, but there is something there, because they don't usually offer officer attendance at anything unless it's to their advantage. We know this from the past. So no, I mean, that is a fact. And if you did do it, how long would it go on before they say, well, we can't resource that anymore? You know, we can't send an officer. And then we'd be stuck with it. So I think we have to think very long and hard about this, Chair. It's a lobbying mechanism, basically. No decision making. It's just having an officer. We've not even got a cabinet member there, an officer there that we can ask to take back concerns that we have gathered together or coordinated. And if it did happen, I'm not sure that we should, I would very much agree with Joanne, the badging of it. This is purely a conduit. We have no say, we have no power, because the minute something goes wrong, well, Swale Borough Council should have done that, shouldn't they? Swale Borough Council didn't raise that, you know, and we'd be beaten with the stick when we have no role, responsibility, or even money to do anything with it. So I think, I think we're missing some reason why KCC wants it, because it isn't because not everyone's going to be consulted. It's never bothered you in the past, has it? So yeah, I would have said on balance, even a resource twice a year. It isn't just twice a year that our director would turn up to a meeting. It's the putting it together prior to that. It's the officers getting things through the area committee, gathering it, you know, putting it out there, gathering it back in. I missed it on that last item, the resource for MEAS. Okay, you know, it's only this many meetings, it's only that many meetings. So what are you not going to do? What are you not going to attend so that you can attend this? Because I know that our officers are fully stretched. Not one of them are sitting twiddling their thumbs thinking, oh, what can I do next? And that is what we need to get into. If we agree something new, what are we going to be getting rid of? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to clarify on that. The actual recommendation says that it will be the chair and vice chair of the Planning and Transportation Working Group, presume, and an officer in that case. So that's 3 people and reps from each of the 4 area committees. Well, that's what the recommendation is, to agree that the LFG reports to the Planning and Transportation Working Groups with the chair and vice chair of Planning and Transportation Working Group attending the LFG and representatives from each of the 4 area committees. So that's a lot of people. And if so, is it a point of having a meeting for having the sake of a meeting's sake? I'm not so keen on that if that is the case. It does make me think also of, in terms of local bus services, and you're right, we obviously don't operate bus services. Perhaps from Town Council are about to introduce a service. Maybe they might be interested to be involved in this, I would suggest. And if we are to agree this, I presume that the representatives from each of the 4 area committees will be chosen by the members of those area committees. I'll be quiet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be quiet, but I will absolutely represent the absolute livid approach of my residents to KCC and their approach to bus transport in their area. And this is absolutely to top it off. We've had members that sit on this council that also sit on KCC telling us for months now, bus transport was never the problem of KCC. It's a private endeavour. It's a private bus company problem. That's why the bus links have been removed from residents. This policy from KCC of removing those routes and that bus transport has put literally people into poverty, has removed people away from their GPs, has removed people away from their health services, has stopped children having access to schools in this area for them to say now, oh, aren't we good putting on a lovely committee that is going to answer all of these questions? It will not. KCC have to take responsibility for what they have done and their communications with central government in terms that they have absolutely decimated bus travel in this county and in Swale. And to say that actually a report back to area committees where there is no decision-making power going up the chain rather than down the chain, I cannot see this being the route forward that residents need to solve this problem. KCC need to take responsibility for their decision-making practices, for where they stick their budget, for their lobbying that they do to central government, and say they either support residents' need for a good bus transport network or they do not, and stop shirking the responsibility back to towns and parishes and to borough councils, because this is their remit, not Swales. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Yeah, I'm going to take a bit of a different approach to this one, because the quality bus partnerships used to be actually pretty good. I used to attend, and the problem with it is nobody actually knew anything about it. I was going to meetings, sitting around the table with the bus companies, KCC, and an officer from this council, and it was actually quite productive of everything we've just heard there about problems with buses and not having services being cut. It's those meetings that they were discussed, and that's where we were told about them before these things happen, and we had a chance to actually sit around the table with each bus company and talk to them and raise the concerns about what they are. And I see this now as actually not KCC pushing aside their responsibilities, but us being able to actually talk to those companies. So, and especially it will work much better having a representative on each area committee that we know who we will be able to feed into and be able to take the concerns back to the bus companies direct. If we don't do that, then all these things will be carrying on and just cuts and that going on with us having no input, no understanding of it. So I think it would be a good thing. And you can see in 2.2 that it's part of the national bus strategy from the government. £3 billion of funding was allocated to it. And at that time, when KCC sought input from districts, Swale did respond. So we have had a response into that when they were doing the bids. And I would assume that if officers can comment on that bit, but I assume when that was being looked at, it was being looked at, the districts would be taking a part in that. And if we did a response to that, I'd assume we probably gave it some support at the time.
Thank you. I've got Emma online, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah, too loud.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm listening to comments in the chamber. It's elements that we looked at when we were putting this proposal together. This is why we're suggesting it's every 6 months that I actually manage and chair that, or at least support should the chair of PTBWG want to, so that it's not as onerous as perhaps we'd like it to be. We cannot manage it if it's similar to the Quality Bus Partnership and how that was set up, which was through democratic services. If those that were involved recall, it was minuted, it was very regimented. We're not suggesting that we would do that this time. The idea, if members were to agree to this, would be that it would be twice a year it would be a forum for discussion with the suggestion of members that we've been thought about, and a way in which to have a dialogue, as Councillor Hunt has said, with the bus partners and KCC. Without that, we definitely won't be at the table or be able to influence any of the money that KCC get in the future or have currently got. We haven't necessarily been specific in securing some of the money that they have had from government because it's been going on high level infrastructure across the county. But certainly the bus companies, when I've spoken to them locally, have indicated, and they do sit on the Enhanced Partnership Board, that they have benefited, things like the concession schemes and the flat rate fares that went over in the summer. So there have been some benefits to the borough, and I absolutely agree and appreciate what Councillor Worcester is saying. My feeling, though, is that if we don't provide anything or any conduit for discussion, we are definitely not at the table at all. And if it's only twice a year, at least then we have the ability to lobby in to the best of our ability, and actually make our points known and local area reps' points known. And certainly, particularly in the active travel side, which I know is a separate piece of funding, we have been successful because we have been working with KCC, and they recognise that we have oven ready schemes, particularly in Faversham, where we've been able to benefit, and they are, looking at Sheppey as well. So there are pros and cons. The resource issue is one that I'm concerned about, hence why I have suggested that I take the lead on that twice a year, and it's very high level and not too onerous. But again, appreciate the different views from people. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring in Councillor Bonney.
Oh, where to start on this one? So if my contribution as Deputy Chair of the Planning and Transportation Working Group is to be, it will be a very short one because I don't have a single bus in my village, the neighbouring village, the other neighbouring village, and one of the others. So it's going to be a really short meeting. And actually what we should do is we should stipulate that those attending go by bus to this meeting, because I think even KCC would have difficulty, and I'd propose that we have it in my village hall, because that would make it impossible. I suppose that just vocalises my frustration, because I understand to have a seat at the table for talking about improvements. Well, there's one thing improving something, and there's another creating a whole service that's been axed. And those in the rural areas particularly, and those in the urban areas or semi-urban areas who currently have what is a skeletal service, it's just a joke. And I don't even see what we're scrabbling for, because what is the funding that is available to Swale? They haven't said. So what is the point of turning up if we don't understand what we're able to access? I've got an awful lot on my plate in regeneration and property, and on deputy chair of that working group, where we've managed to achieve some really significant outcomes. We'll have a whole load of officer time, a whole load of members' time, putting in some significant local information, but to what ends? To what ends if there's no funding? We are completely wasting our time. So I think we actually should be going back to KCC to say, what is it you're offering us before we go and commit ourselves to quite a lot of resourcing. It's only twice a year, but it's quite a lot of resourcing, and reporting back to other committees, disseminating information. To what ends if there isn't a bloody bus service? Excuse my French.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Baldock.
I will be about to say things I don't normally say. But I am largely in agreement with Councillor Hunt. I think, yeah, we know KCC are cutting bus services. We know that there are, they have cut the subsidies, which has meant loads of bus services have vanished. There are areas that have no bus service that used to have one, and it is appalling. But there is money coming from the government, not a lot, but a little bit. We have been able to use some of that money to reinstate part of the 326 to collect people from Gadby Road in my area. I did that by talking directly to Chalkwell about a number of issues, and it was that discussion and proposals from people who live in that area that enabled something to come of it. If we, and we can be cross, and we have every right to be cross, but if we just say, well, we're not going to talk to anybody, then we don't get that message across. We don't get to speak to the bus companies and say, what about this? Have you thought about this? What about a gate here? What about going through this bit? We don't have that. But the Joint Transport Board does NAFL. So this is a conduit for us to be able to put those ideas forward. That's why I am suggested that there was a representative from each of the 4 area committees, so that we've got all the areas of the borough covered. Local people can feed in the concerns, and we've got somewhere to take them. And if after a year or so we do this, and it's like, it is obviously just a whitewash, we have this little group and we consult with them, but nothing comes from it, we can look at it again. But how the heck do you expect to get any kind of message across when you don't have any forum to do so? Yes, me and Rich can go there and we can go and say to cabinet member, oh, we'd like you to do this, or we'd like you to look at that. We can talk to officers and we'll be blue in our face. But it's by having the dialogue with the bus companies, having that local knowledge. I think we would be absolutely crazy to not at least give this a try. And what is our excuse going to be to our residents? Oh, we want a bus. What are you doing about a bus pass? Well, we refused to take part in this organisation because we thought it was a bit of a farce. Okay, so what are you doing? Well, we're writing letters. Right, great. This is, to turn this away would be really quite, yeah. So I think we should go ahead with this. Give it a year, 18 months, see if it's working or not, and then come back. But yeah, we've got the suggestion, but stuff comes back to us. Yeah, I support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wise.
I mean, I'm sort of surprised we need to set something up to have those dialogues with the bus companies, to be honest. It ought to be happening anyway. And I fully appreciate, because buses do mean a lot to our communities. People ought to have a forum. The area committees do exist. So I'm not necessarily opposed to this, but I mean, if Councillor Bonney's suggestion is a serious one, I'd happily second that, because actually I think it's a really serious point. And what really lets any of this down is the national bus strategy is a joke. And when we are talking about funding, it's very prescriptive funding. We've got a government that takes an approach to infrastructure where all local authorities have to go, please, sir, can we have some more? It doesn't work, and it doesn't deliver for what we need in this area. It doesn't deliver something that's sustainable for the future. And I'm sort of very concerned that we sort of create a forum where, because of the impact on the bus services at the moment, people will feel this might actually start to resolve some of this quite quickly, and it's not. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the recommendations. It's just I'm really surprised that we need this to have set up a new forum to have this dialogue with the bus companies in the first place, to be honest. That's the only way we're going to be able to pursue this as viable infrastructure, because the government's clearly not going to back it. So
thank you. Councillor Last, please.
Thank you. I must admit, I do think the bus service in Swale has been decimated in recent years. And I also believe that we should be party to this working group. And I agree that it should be possibly looked at for a couple of years and then review the situation. The reason for that, as chair of area committee at Sittingbourne, we had the bus companies come in and residents, and they discussed what the issues were. And it was very interesting to see that the bus companies are trying to deliver, but there are other things holding them back. And I think it would be silly of us not to be in this forum just for a couple of years, just to see what comes from it. Because I must admit, it was interesting, and everybody who was there found it interesting that people like Chalkwell, a company like Chalkwell, want to deliver services, but it's an economic factor. If this forum finds a way of inducing some more money into that, then maybe we'll get some bus services back. That's all I would say.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
In the interest of time, I think everything that's been said has been said. I've really made my mind up following some of the arguments. I have changed several times, but I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Worcester.
I will say that the Conservative government seemed to go along the lines of, instead of providing a good welfare service that suits their residents, same as KCC, that this will go along the lines of other things. It will be who will join in that conversation, will get this funding. And actually, the people of Dartford are very entitled to a bus service. The people of Swale are very entitled to a bus service that gets them to their priority needs for them. And I thoroughly go against the idea that funding should be allocated based on who is in that conversation, when actually this service is fundamental to the welfare of all residents in Kent and nationally. So I do take the point about got to be in it to get the funding, but that is a principle that I do stand against, because these funding should be allocated better, not whether you're in the conversation or not. Absolutely not. It should be the KCC's representatives in this conversation, and they should be supporting the residents as well here, absolutely, and not foisting it onto borough council or towns or parishes.
Thank you. And I finally got Councillor Bonney.
Thanks. I suppose my reticence here is, having been party to a section 106 where we were looking at bus transport routes and trying to be involved with A, the bus company, and B, KCC, giving them an opportunity to commercialise a route that would have been subsidised and to make it stand on its own 2 feet. And KCC point blank refused. So engaging is one thing, but getting them to do anything is another. I really do feel like we're pushing water up a hill here. I'm happy to give up my seat as deputy chair to somebody else under their recommendation. And if they want to take it, then please let them do so, because they might be a little more enthusiastic than my reticence.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, with that in mind, I propose the recommendations, but with a change to recommendation 2 to say to agree with the LFG reports to the Planning Transportation Working Group, with 2 members of that group attending the LFG and representatives from each of the 4 area committees, but it doesn't have to be named specific people. And can we please get some consistency between PTWG and PTPWG, because yeah.
Okay, so members will go to the vote now. That's very good. Councillor Baldock and Councillor Hunt. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Right, so those in favour of the recommendation with the amendments? Those against? And abstentions? So that's carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 10. And this is in the hands of Jamil, I think, who's online remotely.
Thank you, Chair. I start with Bredgar Conservation Area. We've had a 6-week consultation on the appraisal document, which was held from 3rd of July till 14th of August. We received 3 responses to the public consultation, one from a local resident, one from Historic England, and a very, very detailed one from the Parish Council. Appendix 1 of the attachment lists all the consultation responses, and Appendix 2 includes the amended document, which is based on the responses received to reflect the changes as per the responses. There is no boundary change proposed for Bredgar. So it's recommended that Bredgar Conservation Area be redesignated and the amended document be adopted. Any questions, Chair?
One second, I've got Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This was commissioned by the Western Area Committee. I think it's an excellent piece of work, again, by Jamil and the team. We are looking at possibly in the future designating another area of Bredgar as a new conservation area, which was thrown up by this discussion. I think it's a really good document, and yeah, happy to propose it. I'll second it, or whatever I am. Third it.
Right, Councillor Bonney.
I'll forfeit then. Just to say thank you to the officer and to the consultant, and also the parish council and the residents who contributed. I think this is an excellent document, and I'll give it my full support and recognise the addition or the recommendation to look at another new conservation area around the Bexon Lane area. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had a proposal from Councillor Harrison, seconded by Councillor Lehman. Those in favour? Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Item 11. And that's in your hands again, Jamil. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hartlip Conservation Area, which we held public consultation for along with Bredgar from 3rd of July to 14th of August. We received 6 responses, all from local residents. The parish council had helped us whilst we were walking around to review the conservation area. So they didn't respond to the public consultation, but they did support us quite a lot in preparing the document. There are boundary changes proposed for Hartlip, which is included on page 194 of the packs that you've got in front of you. And there are 3 areas which are recommended for boundary change. The first one, which is at the south end of the conservation area, is Mount Lane. And Mount Lane itself is an ancient lane, and it appears on a number of historic maps dating from 1769. And so it is considered to be of historic interest. And it has steeply inclined banks on both sides of the highway, giving the appearance of a hollow or sunken lane carved into the land over time. Hedgerows and trees at the top of the banks meet overhead, resulting in a tunnel-like appearance, particularly during summer months. Consequently, it has aesthetic and landscape interest. So that's Mount Lane, which is proposed to be included in the conservation area. The second boundary adjustment is Cuckoo Orchard, which is located between the street and Dane Lane, and it slopes gently from Dane Lane up towards the street. Significantly, it provides the setting of the medieval parish church, which is highly visible from vantage points on Dane Lane, as well as from footpaths which intersect the orchards. Although the trees are relatively recent, but the area was historically used as orchards since at least 1871, which is the earliest historic record we have of the orchard. And Dane Lane itself is another ancient single track road lined by hedgerows, trees, and shelter belts, and with isolated historic houses at Lower Dane and Ivy Place. both with exposed timber framing. So therefore, it's recommended that the conservation area be extended to include Cuckoo Orchard, the allotment gardens, the village hall, Dane Lane, Lower Dane, Ivy Cottage, and other dwellings and properties as they are shown on the map on page 194. And the third area that is proposed to be included is called Redcliffe Chase and Keith Styles. So the current conservation area boundary includes the public highway outside the Redcliffe Chase and Keith Styles at the north end of the street, but it excludes the two houses. So these two houses, they date from 1906 and 1938. However, they occupy strategic positions on entering or leaving the village from the north, and both have a degree of architectural interest. And they do express early 20th century fashion for the English domestic revival as influenced by the arts and crafts movement and popularized in the garden suburb movement in the early 20th century. Therefore, it's recommended that the conservation area be extended to include Redcliffe Chase and Keith Styles and their respective gardens for their architectural contribution to the development of Hartlip in the early 20th century. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Palmer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to recommend the recommendations to the council, but I'd just like to highlight that the parish council was fully involved, but unfortunately during the election period, the council finished up not being quora, and there was a big change at the council. Many people had stood down, and they had to get a new clerk, and unfortunately they missed the consultation, but they are fully supportive of what's done. And on the day that we walked down with Jamil, the parish council was fully involved, highlighting things, and there was a lot of information passed over. And I'd like to thank the officer for a very good report, and hope I can recommend this and the council supports it. Thank you. I propose that we recommend this recommendation 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen?
Thank you, Chairman, and Councillor Palmer has answered part of the question I was going to ask about that, so thank you for that clarification. Just disappointing that only 6 respondents came through for this. I presume Hartlip Parish Council has more than 6 people on it, and they could have also responded as individuals, but may have helped. Just to check, and I presume the answer to this is yes, and to avoid potential issues further on, with the boundary changes, and I'm thinking back to last week's planning committee. Are there any properties within the new boundary changes that have part of their properties in the new area or outside? I'm hoping the answer to that is no. Thank you.
Can't stop.
Jamil, are you able to answer that for us?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat that for me?
So the question was, are there any properties that sit part and part either side of the boundary? Bear in mind that the boundary line is going to change. Are there any properties that sit either side of it? So we end up in a position perhaps where one side of the building's windows are within the listed area and the other side aren't, for example.
No. Usually within a conservation area, we try and include the full curtilage of a property, and there's very careful consideration given to the way the new boundary is drawn.
That's comforting. We do it properly now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Baldock.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to second Councillor Palmer's proposal. I think what happened with Milton was that they built after the limits have been put in. Really support this. I support the extensions. My only concern is that there are repeated maps throughout showing the old conservation area, and you only get to see the new one quite late on in the document. I was wondering if we could replicate the new the new boundary on the back page and say revised conservation area, Hartlip conservation area as of 2023. So it's easily found, and you don't look at lots of maps saying, you know, the conservation area, which is the old one. So just repeat the new map on the back so that it's easy to find.
Thank you. Jamil, is that something we can do?
Yes, we can do that, and that is a very good suggestion. Yes, we'll do that in the amended document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. I just had a question. With Hartlip, a boundary change is proposed within this report. And in the case of Bredgar, Councillor Baldock mentioned that they're thinking of designating an extra area as a conservation area. I just wondered why the approach was different, and in one case it's included within the recommendation, and in the other it's a separate exercise.
Councillor Baldock?
Yeah, the other one is about half a mile away from the village centre.
Okay, thank you. So we've got Councillor Palmer proposing it, seconded by Councillor Baldock. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members, and thank you, Jamil. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, now move on to item 12. I think is anyone going to do this one? Right, this is in the hands of Steph.
Good evening, everyone, and sorry for not being there in person. I think you probably all didn't really want my germs this evening. So this report discusses the proposed...
Councillor Raymond's brought his in.
At least it's not two lots of germs to share. Okay, so this report discusses the proposed new staff domestic abuse policy as part of the council's work towards achieving the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance or DAHA accreditation. There's a series of standards that must be met, one of which is having a standalone domestic abuse policy for its staff. This would sit alongside an overarching domestic abuse policy aimed at our residents that was adopted earlier this year. The council does already, through sort of the safeguarding functions and our HR functions, support staff that come forward as victims or survivors of domestic abuse. But this policy consolidates and enhances that support into one easily accessible document. So this staff domestic abuse policy is therefore recommended for adoption by the committee tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Just to say that I think the report's very well laid out, and I'd like to propose a recommendation to the council as it stands in recommendation 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Hunt.
I completely agree with it 100%. Just a question, what about councillors? I know Councillor Gibson and late home a few times and probably needed it. And what about contract staff? Because obviously contractors, we can't have a policy, but do we make sure that any contractors that we take on will be having that sort of policy as well?
Steph, can you come back?
If I could come back, in terms of contractors, we do have a safeguarding contract monitoring framework, which would include the domestic abuse element. So we're quite thorough around the level of expectations of contractors of how they support their staff and sort of dealing with any safeguarding concerns that they have. It was felt particularly from a HR perspective that this policy should just be for staff rather than for members as well. But that is something that we've already picked up on, and we are due to do some safeguarding training for members. I think we've got 2 different sessions booked in, so we will pick up that domestic abuse element of it and what support is available for sort of councillors if they were a victim or a survivor themselves, as well as supporting sort of constituents in your areas that may be victims.
Thank you. See more questions? So, Councillor Worcester.
I will comment. I wasn't going to, but I will. I think this is excellent that Swellborough Council are coming forward with this sort of policy. 50% of calls to Kent Police usually involve some form of domestic violence. So I think it's really important that workplaces take that responsibility seriously, and it's good to see Swellborough Council being a leader in the community like this. I don't agree with comments or jokes about it, to be honest with you, and I will say that openly in public. I think it's very important that we provide a safe environment for people to come forward and make sure they feel fully supported and it's good that it highlights female domestic abuse and also male domestic abuse. So I'm very pleased to see that, because obviously it's a position that affects everybody. So thank you very much. Good policy. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's proposed by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Bowen. Those in favour? Again, that's unanimous. Thank you, members. We now move on to item 14. 13. What's happened here? No, that's the one we've just done. 13. Oh, yes. So sorry, I've got two separate numbers on my tabs, so I do apologise. Right, yes, item 13, and this is the hands of Steph again.
Yeah, me again. So this paper discusses the proposal to set up a local authority good causes lottery. These types of lottery have been in operation around the country for a number of years. There's about 68 in operation at the moment. They enable local authorities to support the voluntary sector in a slightly different way from sort of more traditional means. So with increasing budget pressures, it will enable sort of an organisation and a local authority to make support available when grant giving might become more difficult. Once the good causes lottery is established, ticket sales would cover any ongoing costs, and sort of the staff and requirements in managing it would be more limited and would be able to be met within existing teams. However, at the moment, there is a need for additional resource for its set up, both in terms of staffing and the cost of appointing an external lottery manager. The proposal to establish a good causes community lottery was discussed at the Communities Committee meeting on the 6th of September. The committee was in agreement that it should be set up, but as the funding required for the setup would fall outside of the existing budgetary framework, they were not able to agree how it could be funded and made the recommendation to bring this proposal to this committee for discussion. So this committee is therefore asked to consider whether to proceed with the good causes lottery following that recommendation from the Communities Committee, and if so, how it should be funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy with recommendation 1. Recommendation 2, it was discussed at the Communities Committee and there was a vote taken to whether members' grants should be used, and it was decided by the Community Committee not to include that part B, and I think that should be removed from the recommendation. I have no problem with, if it is approved tonight and goes through, with members being asked if they would like to contribute, but I think because the Community Committee had a vote and asked for it to be removed, it shouldn't be as part of the recommendation. So my proposal would be to amend it slightly, keep recommendation as it is, but remove from recommendation to the B, where it is to ask members
the reference to the members'
to
grant.
allocate part of their members' grant.
Is there a seconder for that? Thank you. Those in favour of that amendment? Those against? Abstentions? Oh. Three abstentions. Yeah. Okay, so that's carried. Back to the substantive element, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I was a bit stunned there because you had a proposal and a seconder for an amendment, and then you just went straight to a vote. So I just was a bit stunned. Okay, so I was going to propose that we don't proceed, but as there is a proposal on the table, I will merely be voting against it. I think in the grand scheme of things, what does this say to our residents? We're going to encourage you to gamble. We need to start being more realistic about what we can and what we can't do. We can't fund lots of voluntary things anymore. Oh, I know, let's up a lottery so that can fund you. We've got to pay for it to be started up and all the rest of it. I just think, no, there's better things, more important things for us to spend our resource on, which includes officer time. And let's be fair, we've just agreed 2. One's the MEAS, and the other one was whatever it was, the buses, how much spare staff resources out there? Because I thought they were pretty, you know, working nose to the grindstone and beyond. We have cut staff to the bone over the years. There's no flesh left. And yet, you know, when it suits us, we can find lots of other things for them to do. So no, I'll be opposing this, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really great idea. We are, you know, struggling for funding. We're a lot of good causes that we previously have been able to support. We can't. This gives a well-established alternative means of supporting local causes. As Councillor Palmer said, it happens in a number of other councils. I think this, you know, this is a way of being able to support some groups which might otherwise not get the support they need. Sorry, and you know, I would support this coming from general funding. We don't know if there's going to be member grants next year, so you know, I think we should come from general reserves. We have, as Councillor Harrison said, already found the ability to fund other meetings. I think, you know, we should be able to fund this out of our existing budgets. This is one of the few ways going forward that we are able to get money out into the community, into those groups that do good work. We always talk about them, we praise them, we say how wonderful and valued their efforts are. We're not going to be able to give them money in future. This is a way of getting some money to them. Nobody's forced to take part in a lottery. Nobody's forced to take part in the national lottery. This is an opportunity for people to contribute. And I think it'll be really successful. I look forward to those good causes getting that money and people feeling that they've contributed to our local causes instead of buying Winston Churchill's memoirs.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
When I first looked at this, my thought was exactly the same as Councillor Baldock. Great idea. We put a little bit of money in as a council, and local groups will have a bigger pot of money to go into and get it, which sounds great. Then when I looked into it a bit more, I came to the same conclusion as Councillor Harrison. I don't see that this is that great. There is the concern with gambling, something that the council at this time where people are struggling with money, are we just doing something else to someone go, oh, I'm only going to put £1 in and I might be able to get some money then because I'm a bit short this month, but they keep doing it and we then start causing a few problems. When you look at the figures on table 1, ticket price, if 1% of the Swale Borough Council population do this, 934 supporters. If those 934 supporters do £1 a week, that is going to bring an income of 24,200 a year. Not a massive pot of money for these community groups to be dipping into. And it's costing us £5,000 a year to do it anyway. So it's £5,000 to get 24,000. So £19,000 pot for our community groups, which doesn't go very far. And we have to have, it isn't using officers for time. It actually says in here that we have to employ someone else. That's £10,000 in the first year to employ someone to come and set this up. If we're looking at this, there's so many things that I keep asking for and we haven't got officer time to do it. If we were, I'm sure if we came and sort of looked at what else do we want, if we could employ one officer a week to do something, what would we want them to do? Would it be running a lottery? It probably wouldn't be. I think there's better things that we could be using officers for. And I think the value that we get from this for £10,000 in the first year, 5,000 each subsequent year, isn't going to be real benefit to the community. So I'm against it.
Okay, thank you. I'm obviously not very good at maths, but is that 10,000 in the first year?
I'll have to look back through, but I'm sure it says that there was a first year because there'd be a setup fee of 10,000, which was 5,000 for an officer a week, 5,000 for the cost of the actual lottery, and then 5,000 in each subsequent year.
Yeah, thank you.
Or round about those figures.
Steph?
I was just going to clarify that, yes, that's correct. It's £5,000 for the, or about £5,000 for the setup fees for the external lottery manager, and then £5,000 for a temporary staff member to get it set up. And then it is about £5,000 a year subsequently for the external lottery manager.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Palmer.
Yep, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, point of order. There was a proposal on the chair. Councillor Palmer proposed it. Is he summing up?
Yeah, is it? I'm prepared to
So
listen to what he's got to say.
I'll sum up at the end.
Okay. Councillor Wise.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the motivation for doing this because obviously we all want to look for ways that we can support good causes in the borough. But unfortunately, my concern's not necessarily about the gambling aspect, because I think a lot of the motivation for people joining this would be to give to a good cause rather than to win big prizes or something. You know, the National Lottery exists for that. But that is who you're ultimately competing against, and it's the sustainability of this that I think, unfortunately, isn't proven. I've had experience of local authorities setting these up, and after about 18 months, they really struggle, and it will require a significant comms push from the council to keep trying to push this for it to work, unfortunately. There are national charities that have tried to set up their own lotteries over the years, and they just don't sustain themselves. So I think it looks like a good concept, but I don't think it's going to achieve what people think it will achieve. Even trying to get 1% of the population doing this 52 times a year, keeping that going, is going to require a really big push, and I'm just not sure that at this stage that's something that we can do as a local authority.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, when this came to IAM to look through, we had quite a detailed report on how it's worked in other areas, the amount of sort of returns, and I suppose I don't know if that was included in the community committee's papers, but it did give good examples of how it has worked and how it's working in other places. So I think to say that you know, it's unproven when so many other areas do it, they obviously don't do it for jolly, so they must. Sorry, that's down to the chair, not you.
Thank you.
Right, yeah, I think there has been, you know, it is a proven success story elsewhere. I think it'd be worth trying it. You know, all these things we can review in 2 or 3 years, but this it has the potential to get, you know, even on the figures that are used in here, £50,000 out to good communities that we won't be giving, but we can't afford to contribute anymore. It has the potential to get publicity for those groups that take part. So I just, you know, with the limited means that we've got now of getting money to good causes, this is possibly the last one that we, you know, the last avenue that we have. And I think it'd be a shame not to try it. any profit that's actually going to the community is to be, is to be lauded. And I think it'd be a huge shame to, not give this a trial.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could scales this one for me again, I get the idea and the sentiment behind it in terms of local causes. Whether it will deliver that, I'm not convinced, and whether it will deliver it into the levels which actually does make a real difference, I'm not convinced. Similarly, how does it play out in terms of public opinion when cost of living, people are struggling to make ends meet, and the councils all over the country are having to cut their cloth, and then suddenly comes forward a borough council and says, hey, gamble a bit more, just give your money away, on the off chance that in 1 in a million chance, what's the population of Swale? Certainly not a million. You may win 25 grand, I think, if memory serves, what's in the paper. 25 grand is a lot of money, but I wouldn't say that's really hugely life-changing in comparison to other lotteries which are out there, which probably attract more people. I'm also aware, as I said this in previous meeting, Alton Town Council have started their own, I think, or looking to start, or have started their own lottery. I wonder how that's going. I don't, on the scales are there, and I think I'm just teaching as to, I don't think this ticks all the boxes for me at this time. I think there are other things which has been said which are far more important for this council to be addressing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask some clarification questions? Would that be okay? Because I want to make sure I understand it before I vote on it, if that's all right.
Sorry, ask them what, sorry?
I'd like to ask some questions about clarification.
Yep.
Thank you. So when I initially read the proposal, and I was at the communities meeting online following the meeting, because I'm all in favour of schemes that do generate outside income, and Swale takes its position as the facilitator. So on paper, I very much support schemes like this. However, I'm interested in the distribution element of this. Is it, for instance, that a pool of money is generated and then any good calls can apply to us for this pool of money? Or are we looking, what is the mechanism for giving the money back out? Sorry if it's in the paperwork, I couldn't find it.
Okay, Steph, can you help with this one?
It's my understanding that some areas do it in different ways. It's, I believe, within our gift to determine how we wish to distribute the funding out, whether we pre-allocate which groups we wish the funding to go to, but we'd obviously need the good causes to come forward to be part of that. So yes, we can certainly we can choose which ones that we wish to sort of have involved with this.
So just to make reference to that, I definitely wouldn't be in favour of a scheme that would, for instance, pre-generate the idea that favoured partners would be, for instance, 6 good causes would come forward and they would be the consistent causes supported by this. I think that flies in the face of what the scheme is trying to achieve. So that point of clarification, that hasn't been predetermined. So that isn't part of what we're looking at today, is how that money will be. When will that be actioned, and who will decide that sort of decision if this is successful tonight?
Steph?
I think, well, again, it's sort of open for debate for members, I suppose. I don't know whether sort of from conversations that others have had, sort of Emma, who's been involved with this previously, but I believe, sort of whether there are members that wish to be involved in how we do actually decide which organisations to allocate that out to. As I know Emma's got a hand up, I don't know if she can clarify on that point.
Yeah, sorry, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So when we've looked at the business models of other areas that have done this, they have some of them have given criteria, I think similar to where we've set up various grant schemes. So we would have criteria to allocate where people can bid based on that criteria. So certain themes that we wouldn't want to, or certain organisations that are following certain causes that we felt as a council weren't appropriate or linked with our values, for instance. So we would have that parameter. But in terms of who would decide, again, in many ways, I guess for ease of administration, and we talk about resource, we'd have to find a way of doing that so that we could get this the money out and allocated. And if that was to go through an element of committee or member discussion, then absolutely we can set that up. That does add to the resource and the timeliness that we would need to do that, but it's not impossible. And I'm sure that we can learn as we've looked at the other authorities of how they've done it. So however members would want to do that, we can put in a procedure to allow that to happen.
Thank you. And my last question or clarification, obviously, is very last one, I promise. When we're looking at the ways of funding this area, I noticed that there isn't an option here for the scheme to wipe its own face. So, for instance, the money that is generated from the scheme has not been considered for paying for the scheme. And also the other element that hasn't been considered is taking on a partner for this scheme. So SWAL would facilitate the start of this scheme and would be looking around for a potential partner in the community that would take forward those ideals and potentially would be able to then, we start with officer time, but then we're actually looking at finding those skills in the community to represent that. I just noticed that those two options haven't been considered. And I wondered why those two options hadn't been considered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Steph, can you answer that?
Yep, I mean, certainly we would envisage that the scheme would wipe its own face, so to speak. The setup costs were literally more for the staffing to enable to get it off the ground to start with, as well as the setup costs for the ELM, but we would certainly expect it to cover its own costs moving forward. And again, very good point about the partner, a partner becoming involved in leading it as well. I don't believe those conversations have already happened, so that could be something that we look forward to the committee agree to go ahead.
Councillor Lemon, please.
Thank you. There's just been so many things said that I wanted to respond to. I can't remember them all. Councillor Hunt said, what is a real difference, or this won't make a real difference. Prior to the pandemic, I was very active in a group called Plastic Free Faversham, unsurprisingly in Faversham. They signed up for the Faversham Town Community Lottery, and it's raised them nearly £1,000, which can buy 50 sets of litter picking equipment. And, you know, it depends on your scale of reference or whatever, but that is a real difference to that group. It's a huge thing for them to have that kind of funding where, you know, they're just really a bunch of volunteers. They don't have funding from other sources. And if they did, it would probably be community member grant money from us. And if you look on the Faversham Community Lottery website, they're relatively down the list of good causes that have made, you know, gained money through this. And as far as I'm aware, in answer to Councillor Worcester's question, the model that they use is that you go to the Faversham Community Lottery website and you choose the organisation you wish to support from a list. So the funding is distributed according to the number of players who you know, want to support that particular cause. In response to the gambling thing, I'm very much against gambling. You know, I think scratch cards are ridiculous, you know, just horribly addictive, and it really depresses me if I go into a newsagent's and I'm stood behind someone who gets a £15 winnings and then spends all of that plus another £15 on £30 worth of scratch cards. It's just awful. But this is all done in a very, you know, distant way with direct debit payments and signing up. You know, it's not that instant hit that anyone who would be addicted to gambling might be enticed by. And, you know, ironically, Lloyd kind of almost gave an argument in favour of that. The odds of 1,000,000 to 1 to win 25,000 underline the fact that it's not attractive to someone who's a gambler, because if you were into gambling, you would probably want better odds than that. So yeah, those are a few of the things that I said, I wanted to come back instantly to Councillor Palmer's point at the very start of this discussion, and which is why I abstained on his proposal, which is that, as far as I can see, members being asked to allocate a portion of their members' grant, I read that as invited to, not asked, you know, just given the opportunity to. And I would be happy to give a small amount of mine towards it, which might allay some of the concerns of members who don't want this to come out of reserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyne, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Let me come back. I was saying about the scales a minute ago. My scales have firmly tipped into the actual. I don't like this at all now. I think that the more I'm listening to the costs in my head, I'll just go ooh, and getting higher and higher and higher on a budget which actually we haven't agreed or worked out for this year. It seems also that to me it's getting more and more complicated without even setting it up. That we can suddenly go online, you can pick your good calls. It's getting really, it's a local lottery. But if it were to be agreed, one suggestion we may want to consider in terms of allocating money, if this were agreed, we could actually give the area committees a bit of a purpose. Maybe some of the monies raised could actually be put to the area committees for their local good causes, for them to decide, with an element retained as a sort of a central pot for anything else. And that takes out the equation of actually one either committee or group of people deciding across Swale what's actually used and isn't a good cause, and give a purpose back to the area committees. But overall, I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Last.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted a clarification, if you like, probably point of order. If we vote this down tonight and it doesn't get passed, when would it come back to a committee? i.e., is there a timescale before agenda items can come back? That's what I really wanted to know.
Or did you do it? 6 months. Okay. Councillor Bonney, please.
Thank you. You know, I think this is quite difficult in the straitened times. However, I think we have to be realistic in that things like members' grants, obviously funding around area committees has disappeared. And I see this as the legacy. So whilst there's an initial setup cost for which I would be prepared to put in some of my local members' grant to set that up so that there is a legacy for local causes. And I think actually Councillor Bowen's idea of maybe putting that to the area committees is quite a good suggestion and probably quite a fair way of looking at it. Obviously, it's in the hands of residents to take it up, but there will be people in the community who will want to feel they're supporting small local causes, and it gives them an opportunity to do that in a way where, you know, if a number of us contribute an amount from our members' grants, then it takes the burden away from the council and it leaves a legacy from what I can only see as we'll probably be facing a reduction in members' grants, if at all, in the future. So if it's not next year, it'll probably be the year after, given our financial position, but we do leave a legacy behind.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, so thanks for letting me come back and just quickly just to clarify myself a bit more on that, because what Councillor Leam said about me saying there's not a big pot, what I'm saying is it's the value that we are putting in as a council in the budget of £5,000 a year of how much we get out of that. And if we're saying £10,000 set up for the first year, I understand that maybe £1,000 to someone like Plastic Free Faversham, or that's £10,000 in that first year that we could give to 10 organisations, £1,000 without having to do any of this. And because there is no budget for it, I think it's difficult. It's going to have to come out of reserves this year, which we've had warnings over already about taking out of reserves. And I personally would rather see something like look at the members grants a little bit different, maybe next year to say we put all of that members grants into a big pot, £47,000, brings it up to something like this, and we have something where when community groups can bid in for a pot of money. So getting out the same thing what this would be, but a different way of looking at things could be something, but without going down this route.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you for letting me come back, because I did speak once already, and one is only supposed to speak once.
Unless the chair decrees otherwise.
Yeah, but not 5 or 6 times though, eh? I know people say it's only a small amount, but all these small amounts and all these small amounts of time all add up. We know that there are budget issues. I've spoken to our colleagues and said, you know, I know she won't be, but say she issued a 114 and the people with the hobnail boots come in, it'd be, right, well, that stops. You know, I mean, I know it's not on a par with, oh, they bought a shopping centre. Oh, they set up a lottery. That's what they've been doing with their money. How do you think it sounds to Joe and Josephine Public out there? Our job is to provide public services, not to support charities and the rest, much as we would love to support our community groups and the rest of it. We have a core job. If we cannot even do our core job, and it is getting more and more difficult with the way that the grants have been cut to the bone since colleagues over the road, their party's been in power since 2010, we've been cut to the bone. There's no point saying, well, you know, we still want to help those people out there, so let's set up a lottery to do it. You know, I just think it's a nice thought, but it's impractical, and in these straitened times, it's a bit too far. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Bollock, I'm going to let you come back one more time and then we're going to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, a lot of the things that are being said, it is actually all in the report. Second year costs will be recovered through ticket sales. So you're not on about this being an ongoing cost. It covers it. The whole point is it covers our costs, and then the proceeds go to good causes. There's a whole section on here on how you identify the good causes. But I think Councillor Bowen's suggestion was really good, and we could deliver through the area committees, quite a good programme. Although that's not the only good thing about area committees. It wasn't just about giving money away. It was about looking at policies. So, read what's in the appendix. A lot of those questions are answered. It is, we're not inventing the wheel here. This is something that happens elsewhere. It's not problematic. As we heard, it runs in Faversham. They seem to be running it quite well. This is a way of getting money out to those organisations who, when they write to us in future, we say, oh, sorry, no money. They can still get it. They can still get money. They can still get things. They deliver services that we want to deliver but can't. All we're doing by saying no to this is denying those community groups and those charity groups the opportunity to deliver the services that we used to deliver and were proud to deliver and are struggling to deliver anymore.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you for the opportunity to sum up. Gambling. I think if you're worried about gambling, it's not from a lottery. It's from fruit machines or online. I don't feel this would have an impact on gambling whatsoever. Councillor Baldock's quite right. The devil is in the detail. Let's have a look at page 228. 3.2. Scheme will be managed by an external lottery management company. Now, they will manage the prize fund and the associated insurance. They will build the website and provide the marketing. They will get local good causes to sign up to the lottery and get their own web page. And that's how some of the good causes or local causes, whether it be a local air cadet unit or a SATIDA, that's how they can sign up, get their own web page, get their supporters, to sign up for a lottery from their webpage, and proportion of that funding will go direct to them. So there is a direct link and a benefit for the more number of organisations that sign up, that they will get more support locally, and it's local organisations getting support from local people. And you will find a lot of local lotteries receive a lot of support. The air ambulance is supported by lottery funds. So, and I don't see that they're quite worried about causing gambling. So good causes can be encouraged to get their supporters to support them, and they can buy their tickets online on that good cause's own website that's produced for them, and a proportion of that money comes back to them. So it's all in the report. It's only year one pump priming. There's no spiraling out of control of funding. It's a pump priming to get it going. I think it's a sensible use of money. It's a sensible use of reserves, which can be used for one-off, and that's what they are there for. And this is an ideal way. Yes, members can be asked to support it with their members' grant, and that's reasonable to do so. And no doubt some people will. And it's up to members here or at some other committee or council on any surplus that is left into the council to decide how it is, how it can be used, whether it goes via area committees, if it's permissible within the rules, and other good causes locally. But it must be good local causes. Yeah. Well, that's a good point, just been pointed out. We could even start it in the year 2024, 25 and put it in the budget. But I would feel that our good causes and our local groups here would actually be looking at us and saying, perhaps we've had an opportunity to get some funding in, supported by our local council, which is supposed to be there, yes, to support our community where we can. And I see this as a good opportunity to try to get as many involved to support our local communities, and those communities to also benefit by getting people to sign up. So I would hope that members would give this an opportunity. It's only, if you said £10,000 for this year, which is in the big scheme of it for a council, isn't that much. If it brought in 30 or 40, 50, £60,000, if it brought in £100,000 and there was only £10,000 a year administration, then your good causes are benefiting and the local charities are benefiting, and it's local. And some of these will be very small
10 seconds.
organisations who probably wouldn't have an opportunity to do this unless we gave them the gateway. I hope you can support this recommendation tonight. Thank you.
We call for that recorded vote.
Okay. All right, can I just check you as the official second? I've got you as a proposer. Thank you, Councillor Baldock. So, Councillor Baldock. For. Councillor Bonney.
For.
Councillor Bowen.
Sadly against.
Myself against. Councillor Harrison. Councillor Hunt. Councillor Last. Councillor Lehman. Councillor Palmer. Councillor Speed. And Councillor Marchington. Councillor Wise. And Councillor Worcester.
Against in its current form.
So there's 6 for and 7 against. So that one's not carried.
Point to note, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I would hope that at some point from the comments that this may well come back
Yes.
at the earliest opportunity, but in a better way.
I would hope that the next time it comes back, members read the agenda item in full and are informed of the ins and outs. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we now move on to agenda item 14, which is the corporate peer challenge. And I think Janet was going to do that one for us. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Chair. In March 2023, the Swale Borough Council undertook a local government association corporate peer challenge. Councillors and officers from other councils spent a week at Swale House looking at how we operate as a council. Members and officers from across the organisation were interviewed, as were external partners. The Peer Challenge team provided a detailed feedback report, which was published on their website on the 10th of October, containing 10 key recommendations. Members and officers have considered the peer team's recommendations and have drafted an action plan which members of the Policy and Resources Committee are asked to consider and agree this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions or observations? Councillor Boyne?
I'll propose the recommendations. I think in terms of also the recommendations within the actual report itself, I'm pleased that a lot of this has already, it seems to be started. When an example in terms of the values, I think we had the staff domestic abuse, there's an element of that sort of development that's already been undertaken. I think the challenge that we have as a council is, frankly, actions speak louder than words at times, and we all, the recommendations here, we all at times need to look at and consider how they imply to ourselves as individual councillors and our conduct at times. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Hunt?
And I think it's good that we've got this. Just, I think I didn't highlight it in the document, but I think it said about the peer group coming back in March, I think it is. And just some of these things that we've got on here about looking at the committees that we've got and the numbers and all these sorts of things. Are we going to be in a position that we've actually made some good progress on this by March? Or when they come back in, we've actually really have got to grips with all of these and started taking them forward?
We'd certainly hope so. Okay. Thank you. So proposed for that, Councillor Bowen, seconder. Councillor Harrison, those in favour? Those against? And abstentions? It's got one abstention. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Right. Item 15, the Revs and Benefits Shared Service Progress Report. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I have been managing the Mid-Kent Revenues and Benefits Service as well as the Swale team since January 2022, and this has given me a good insight into the Mid-Kent service. The original project looking at whether Swale should join the shared service was paused in January 2022 to enable the Swale Revenues and Benefits team to bring in the changes listed in 2.2, and I will just run through those. The council tax reduction scheme, banded scheme, is working well. 65 to 70% of information received from Universal Credit is now automated. The change of the document management system to NEC is moving forward. The team like the look of the new system and have been over to Maidstone to understand how they use it. We are ensuring we are aligning where possible the system with Mid-Kent. The move of the team members to the customer services team is moving forward. Team has been picked and training is currently taking place, and we are ensuring we have the right processes in place. Our main aim is to ensure within the process the customer still comes first. Proposed timetable of the reports, the business report going forward is shown in table 1 on page 2. The first approval will be to the management teams in the week commencing the 6th to the 9th of November. After that, sorry, just moving to my report, the approval will go to the MKS Executive Board, which will be the Section 151 officers. We're looking to bring that forward week commencing the 20th of November. In December, it will be approval of the business case by the MKS Full Board. It will then, in January 2024, come to Swale to make its decision at the Swale Policy and Resources Committee. If it is then approved, it will then go to Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells cabinets, and they will make separate decisions. They may be on the same night, but it is a sovereign decision by each cabinet. You are asked to note the timetable within the report.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been watching from afar, not so much afar now as afar when it was the previous leader of the council. This did come up some years ago when colleagues across the chamber were in control. And I have to say, your leader at that time agreed very much with myself that if it was going to happen, it should be to the benefit of our residents. And at that time, it wasn't. It was all about what one particular council did, and we had to follow suit or don't bother joining. Our officer tried very hard at the time, so it never went any further. Now, this time, Zoe is in charge. Got a lot of time for that person over there. A lot of common sense. A lot of people on the island, I can't speak so much for Sittingbourne and Sheppey, a lot of people on the island still have problem with online. And a certain council only ever did it online. It was online or nothing. So that's no good to my residents. If we're providing a service, it's got to be to suit the people that need it. Because the bottom line is, if our residents ain't claiming benefits, you wouldn't be in a job. So you have got to make sure that it's accessible to them. And I'm very pleased to say that the way things are going in terms of the business plan and all the rest of it for us joining a shared service is so much better than the initial one that was proposed some years ago. So I'm really pleased with the work that our staff have done on this to make sure that what comes out at the end of the day, if we agree it, is something which would be okay for our residents and not just suit one particular part of the county. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
I just have one question, and I think, as I said, it's a sovereign decision. What's a sovereign decision?
It's per authority. So I've put in the table that Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells could make a joint, they could have a joint cabinet to make the decision about whether Swale would join, but Maidstone would make the decision and Tunbridge Wells would make the decision. They wouldn't make, it wouldn't be a joint decision.
No, I appreciate that, but it's the word sovereign. We just make a decision, don't we? The royalty makes a sovereign decision.
It means that it's your own authority's decision, especially when it's looked at in a collective decision-making process.
Okay, so those in favour? Right, could I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Seconder, Councillor Bowen. Now those in favour? Those against? 2 against, so that's carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 16, which is a forward decisions plan for noting. Thank you. Then item 17. Oh, sorry.
I presume it's just a typo, but looking at the final budget, it says the 7th of February. Is that correct? Or should it be the 20th of March?
No, that's correct, yeah.
Is this the 7th? Just wanted to check.
Thank you. No, thank you. So agenda item 17, and this is just a P&R committee's recommendations for approval. Can we approve those? Thank you. Proposer first. Oh, you're going to propose? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Baldock, seconded. Those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Thank you, members. Didn't see that, Kelly, was that? Well, apologies, we're not quite finished. It's the JTB bits which
Yeah, I think this is an appropriate place to bring this up as it relates to transportation. And we talk about a multi-agency task force to monitor the wider road network to ensure the current programme of works and any future planned works delivers mitigations to allow for the regeneration of shared spaces, blah, blah, blah. Can we write to the Highways Agency and KCC to talk about the absolute gridlock through the programming of their works for the A249 and Junction 5, the fact that they've been tied together and the consequences for our residents in Sittingbourne Town Centre and for those that travel over to the island has been monumental in the last few weeks. And I think this is an appropriate place to bring it up. I don't know how we deal with it, whether we put that as an additional recommendation on there that needs to be taken forward.
So if it might be helpful to, I had a meeting with Gordon Henderson last Friday. He invited all councillors, which he expressed disappointment at, that only 2 had gone, one of them being Councillor Hunt. And I sent my apologies, I couldn't be there. And I know others did. But what happened at that meeting was that's what I'm saying, that was the meeting of the highways and the KCC. And well, you were at the meeting, Councillor, so perhaps you can either support or deny. But the situation was KCC said their issue was around funding, they'd lose the funding if they didn't do it at that time. So that wouldn't happen. Obviously the Highways England bit was, that had been scheduled in and their works were underway. And there wasn't a great deal that they could do, but what Gordon Henderson did manage to get them to do was to whether they blocked off the slip road at Key Street to allow it to get that removed and allow access into the town that way. So that's a position really. KCC are saying that it's because they lose the funding. Highways England say, well, we already had ours programmed in, but it's not great for the residents, and I myself have been stuck in it.
If I can come back, because that is an entirely bureaucratic response from KCC. And it's an unacceptable response in my view, because they are in charge of the local road network. The fact that they are unable to negotiate a short extension reflects upon their abilities and skills, I would suggest here. And the fact that our residents have had to put up with our emergency services, our school kids, it's every element of society has had to put up with the gridlock locally. And it is, I mean, that's what government is supposed to be for, whether it's big government or little government, is to coordinate between them. And there has been an absolute failure. And I think this committee should recognise as policy and resources that there has been a cataclysmic failure in those two parties to negotiate a reasonable timeframe to do such works. And I'll put that down as a proposal for an amendment or an additional item on the agenda to take forward.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, I'm afraid, and I totally sympathise and I agree with it. It's been a debacle, but this agenda item is to agree the recommendations of the Joint Transportation Committee, which is a specific meeting. This was not discussed at that meeting, so we can't add it surely under the Constitution to the recommendations, and would therefore mean it should be a separate agenda item for the appropriate committee to go to in due course. We can't do this on the hoof tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, this whole proposal is a response to the utter mess that has gone on. It's a statement that all their existing arrangements have failed, and it was noticeable at the JTB how the KCC officers and the National Highways officers were very quick to defend what they had in place and say they thought it was good. And if it was good, then we wouldn't be in a position of having to make this suggestion. So whilst Councillor Bone is quite right, you can't add to what comes out of the JTB. I think that this this committee, having seen what has come out of the JTB, could agree to write and say this has been a debacle. We note what the JTB have said. We approve what they've recommended, and as a result of their evidence, we write and say this has been a debacle. This is why we would like you to set up the multi-agency task force, so that hopefully going forward, because this is another 18 months to 3 years, but going forward, they can get rid of some of the mess that they've made so far. And part of it is, not knowing that if you've got a diversion in Kiko Hill and you put allow roadworks in Lower Halstow, you've knackered every other road up between them, because they don't know that that is the impact it has. So I'd be quite happy to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wider than that, because just even simplistically locally, I had to go take my mother-in-law to hospital. She lives in Whitstable, but to get there, I sat in Bapchild until I'd grown a beard. And once I got through those lights, I then sat at the next, and almost grow hair as long as yours, Mike, waiting for those to change. About no more than 200 yards up the road, you know that, Lloyd, about 200 yards up the road, there they were again with another set of lights. And there hasn't, I don't know what everybody says, been a week for the last, I don't know how many years, that there hasn't been some kind of highways issue along the A2. So what I would say is, even outside of this committee, I'm quite prepared to write, and I think we'll do it that way. But I will reference this in the letter.
I'll help you proofread it if you want.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
I think I'll also raise as well on that point with the Rural Highways Review. It isn't just Hartlip, Newington, Upchurch, Bobbin Highway, Lower Halstow that's being affected. We've also got the Meads, Kemsley's being affected, the whole of Sittingbourne. So it is a bigger issue that can be taken up. But if we're adding it to this, we need to start adding everything else and start changing what they've said at the JTB. So We need to just go with what they've done here and take it outside if you can.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So, those in favour of noting, can you proposal for noting those? Thank you, councillor Harrison.
Sorry,
Right.
Chair, can I just add a point of note that that wasn't the only meeting that was discussed, that the residents had a meeting. I'm sure that's what you're discussing, Greyfriars Roundabout. Yeah,
Yes.
so that wasn't the only, I just wanted to add, because I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the MP did hold a meeting, but actually there was one held for residents that wasn't suitable for anybody that worked. And
Yeah,
3 Swale
exactly.
Borough councillors did turn up to that. So myself, councillor Jays and councillor Cannell were actually present at that meeting, and we were there to support residents in the right guise, as opposed to it being like sweets given out to residents. They should have been the priority all along and been informed at every point of development from this proposal, because it affects them so badly. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, on that note, I close the meeting and bid you a safe journey home. Thank you for your forbearance this evening. Yes, yeah. Yeah. Right.